podcast. I'm Sonia, wife to James, mum to Hudson, Tilly, Elwood and Kit, who range in age from 12 down to 7, and I'm also the families lead at Kerith Community Church. In each episode, I have a conversation with someone relating to the journey we are on in parenting and family life. If you're looking for expert parenting advice, well, you've come to the wrong place. I do hope, though, that this will be a place to share, to find affirmation, a place that may challenge our thinking, open our eyes to other people's situations, and ultimately help us to realise we're not alone in this journey of parenting. Perhaps you're just starting out, or perhaps your children are nearly adults. Whatever your situation, you are all welcome to join us in this conversation. This week, I chatted to Katherine, founder and CEO of the charity Create Hope, who offer emotional support to children, young people and families. Welcome, Katherine, to the Are We Nearly There Yet podcast. How are you, Katherine?
I'm good. Yeah, great to be here. Thanks, Sonia.
You're so welcome. We're so grateful to have you with us this week. I'm very aware that some people listening will know who you are and some people won't know who you are. So I'd love you to tell us, who is your family? And by that, I mean family when you were younger, and who's your family now? Your immediate family. Who do you class as your immediate family?
Yeah, so I grew up with my mum, dad, brother and sister. I'm the youngest of 3 siblings, and we grew up in kind of South Ruislip, so sort of kind of outskirts of London is how I tend to describe it, or not far from Heathrow Airport. And growing up, my family, I was a Barrett, because obviously before I got married, so some people still know me as Katherine Barrett. And then 3 years in August this year, I married Simon Hockley, and Simon is a counsellor at Yeldall Manor, which is a drug and alcohol rehab for men in Reading. And yeah, we got married coming up for 3 years ago, and we have our little dog Hamish, who's a cockapoo, who we kind of rehomed about a year ago. So he's 2.5, totally mental, but we love him to bits. So that's us, really.
Oh, lovely. Mrs. Hockley then. 3 years, that's gone quickly.
I know, it's crazy.
Oh, that's so nice. So, Katherine, you are here with us. You're the first person who is not a parent on this podcast, this family and parenting podcast, but you have so much experience of working with children and families that I just wanted you to come on and share your wisdom with those of us that are listening. So tell us a little bit about how you've got that wisdom, what you do for a living, because not everybody will know about the charity that you work for.
Yeah, so I run a charity called Create Hope, which I founded almost 5 years ago now, 5 years in September, and we offer emotional support to children, young people and families, and that's through different services. So we do a lot of kind of therapy services, but it's really tailored to kind of the needs of individuals. So some of it will look like, children coming for quite a few sessions. Sometimes it will be kind of more supporting parents, talking about how to kind of help your child if they're struggling with kind of different emotions or different situations or relationships within the family. So we predominantly we're going into schools. Obviously it's changed a little bit because of COVID-19, but we support all members of the family. So our remit is the whole family, whatever your age is, whatever your kind of relationship is. But like you were saying at the beginning, we're all in family, aren't we? But that family can look quite different.
Yeah, definitely.
And we're just there to sort of, we work with so many different, like a real spectrum. So from families where there's been maybe domestic abuse, maybe there's been some really traumatic experiences, to families maybe where it's just kind of just challenging. Parenting, what I've learned from working with lots of parents is parenting can be hard, parenting can be a struggle, and I guess it's just finding that space to be able to talk about that, to explore that, to think about different ways to kind of work in that, really. And that's what we're there for, to kind of help them with that emotional journey, really.
So what prompted you to start Create Hope?
So I'd always had a heart. Like, I remember at 14 wanting to be an art therapist, and at 14 it was such an unusual thing for anybody to want to do, really. But and then when I looked into it, it was something that you kind of, you know, you needed to go back later in life, you needed to go and experience life a bit. So I kind of went to uni, did an art degree, and kind of lived life a little bit, I guess. And then and I found myself in the situation of, what do I want to do? It kept coming back, and then I ended up doing play therapy, and yeah, kind of always worked with children and families. I always worked in that kind of sector, whether that be for the council or through I worked in a residential unit with children with disabilities as well. And then I just really felt like I'd done all my qualifications and wasn't using it, and really probably the first time I really felt God kind of prompt me to step out a little bit. And that's where kind of I stepped out to set up Create Hope. And yeah, it's one of those journeys that's almost like, I don't quite know how it all happened, but it happened because God was in it, and God is still in it and driving it sort of forward. But yeah, just recognizing a real need for more emotional support for families locally in Berkshire, where there isn't so much. Like, there's things like CAMS, the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Service, but obviously it's very oversubscribed, and for some families actually it's not an appropriate service, it's not actually what they need, but there isn't many other services. So that's where we kind of came in to kind of fill that gap, really, and help families who, you know, might not have, they may have other things going on as well. So we do work with children who have kind of disabilities, or kind of are on the autistic spectrum, or kind of ADHD and things like that. But we also work with families where maybe that isn't the case, but they're still struggling emotionally and just need a safe space to let that out, and to look at that and explore that.
Often the thresholds are quite high, aren't they, to see certain services, but
Yeah.
you guys at Create Hope, you will, as you've said, you'll see anyone, really, won't you? There's no threshold. It doesn't have to be like the worst of the worst for people to benefit from your services.
Exactly. And I think that's, I guess, when people hear the word therapy, sometimes they may think, oh, we'll only work with kind of real extremes. But the reality is especially our play therapy, and then we have volunteers that do what we call therapeutic play. It's really gentle. It's all about the child. It's all led by the child. And it's just about, you know, like, I think we all need a safe space, don't we, to kind of start to understand ourselves better, to express ourselves. And that's what we want to do. And I think if we have that, and children have that, you know, almost like the early intervention kind of thing, then it might prevent some of the more challenging stuff that can happen. You know, definitely, you know, there's a lot of research that, you know, children that just have that safe space to explore themselves at a younger age might not then go on to kind of develop, or, you know, have more mental health issues, sort of thing. So I think it's really important that, yeah, people just kind of recognize that it's not like, and I guess the big thing is, like, it's not a failure as a parent to kind of reach out for that support as well, because we're not here to place blame or anything like that. We're here to support you all, because we recognize how challenging and how different parenting can be, and kind of those relationships and those emotions.
And I often think someone who isn't in the thick of it, like when you're in the thick of parenting years ourselves, like, we're very kind of blinkered maybe because we're so emotionally involved and so emotionally invested in our kids, that actually sometimes having somebody external to just help join the dots in certain areas and help, just to help.
Yeah, I find I do that quite, like, I always think that's the great thing of doing therapy, is I'm not there to give answers, because, and I always say to a parent, like, I can't tell you how to parent your child, because I'm not a parent myself, and I'm not your child's parent. But what I can do is help you to maybe explore what you are doing, what you think's working, where you think the challenges are, what you could maybe do differently. And I think sometimes it's just that space, isn't it, to not feel like I've done it all wrong, but that maybe, you know, I'm doing this and it's you know, it's not working, so how could I approach it in a different way? And and I think that helps parents, because I guess there's a lot of focus, isn't there, on being on parenting and like being a good parent and doing it, do you follow this book or do you follow this book, or, and I kind of think actually I believe every parent has the best skills because they've given birth to that child. They're kind of brought that child up, so it's more about kind of just homing in on that a little bit, really
helping people to help themselves almost.
Exactly, definitely. Yeah.
I remember someone saying to me quite early on in my parenting journey, nobody has ever had your child before. Yeah, because like there are all these books and different ways of doing things, but there's so many different factors, aren't there? There's the way we were brought up, there's a kind of background, whatever's going on currently in our life, there's external factors, work, pressures, all different things, and our children are all unique.
Just stopping and thinking about that, isn't it, and reflecting on that, and actually giving yourselves a bit of a break in all of that. That like, I worked with a family recently where mum and dad were brought up very differently, and so when they were looking at kind of supporting their child, there was challenges in that because they both had different perceptions of what, how they should discipline, how they should do that, and actually by just starting conversation around that helped them to then sort of view it differently and kind of go, oh yeah, well of course this is what my experience was and this is mine. And then it's about like, well, how are you going to create your new experience together, and what do you need from each other? And I think sometimes it's just taking that moment out, because I guess that's the other thing with parenting is it's so busy, you don't always kind of think you have that time to stop and to kind of think about things in a different way, because you're just doing as well.
It's good to take a step back and see the bigger picture.
Yeah, definitely.
Having time with you. So what does a normal week look like? And I'm aware that it might look different at the moment because we've been in this season of COVID-19, but what would a week look like before that, and what does it look like at the moment for you?
Yeah, so before COVID-19, so we work a lot with schools, so I guess a sort of term time normal week would be, between all the team, we would be supporting around about like 60 families a week through different services. So that might be through one-to-one sessions with a child in a school, and giving them that space to express their emotions and kind of build that relationship. It might be running a small group with some parents to explore relationships and feelings. It might be doing some joint sessions with children and parents together and exploring those relationships and kind of that communication between them. And then we'd also, so that's sort of our heart, really, our main work that we would do. And then I guess because we've been growing over the last few years, we've trained volunteers, and we've kind of developed our kind of reaching out and kind of, hopefully helping people know about us, and kind of getting to know about our service. Obviously doing fundraising, so we do lots of funding bids and things like that, so we can have a bursary fund so that those families who can't afford our services but still really need it can access it. So that's kind of was an average week, if you like, or obviously since COVID-19, schools have been really impacted because a lot of schools are kind of part closed or kind of restricted on what children can access it. So that's really impacted us. We've had to, unfortunately, our 2 workers that we had employed that were going into schools, we have had to furlough them for this period. We're really hoping we can bring them back ready for September to offer more support. So for me, it's been doing lots of funding because, again, a lot of our income was impacted by the closure of school, but also just doing different support. So adapting to online support. So whereas before we did all face-to-face sessions, we've been kind of utilising the Zoom and Skype and all of this, and being able to support a lot more parents, actually. So although we're not working directly with the children as much, it's starting to increase, which is fantastic. We've been able to support the parents and talk to them, and as I said, that might look like a regular session where a parent comes on and we work through some stuff that they're challenged at home or their relationship with their children, or it might just be a one-off call that a parent just says, I don't know what to do in this situation, or my child's just starting to do this, or my child's struggling with homeschooling, and just talking that through and exploring how they could approach it. So I guess I think we're not working with as many families, but we're also working with families in quite different ways than maybe we were before lockdown.
I'm interested to know, like you said, you've done more with the parents. One of the things you do usually is play therapy. firstly, people listening may not know what that entails and looks like usually. So if you could give us a quick explanation of that. But yeah, how is that transferring to this current season?
Yeah, so play therapy, how I always look at it is it's basically counselling, but instead of just talking, we use play and creativity to help children and adults kind of express themselves. So one example of a case study that I worked with was a boy. He'd witnessed domestic abuse. He came to the sessions, he didn't want to talk about it, but he used the puppets and he acted out a lot of violence and a lot of kind of aggression through the puppets. And then over time, as kind of we helped him to, or me, I worked with him to just hold that space, I guess, and give him permission to express all of that. Over time, he mentioned it a couple of times, but he didn't really want to talk about it. And then his play just changed and he moved into much more kind of turn-taking play, wanting me to play games with him, wanting to interact. And then alongside that, what they noticed in school was his sort of peer relationships were a lot better. He was engaging in his learning a lot better, kind of his attainment had gone up. And so play therapy is kind of just giving that child that space to find their voice really and kind of express themselves, but not having to find words all the time, just, you know, kind of using what is their language really, isn't it, of those kind of toys and that play.
Yeah, it's so interesting, and the things that come out during those sessions.
Oh, it's amazing. It's a real privilege to be part of it. I always think that like it's challenging sometimes, because obviously we do work with kind of some cases where it is, you know, it's been hard, they've been trauma, they've been through a lot, but it's such a privilege to kind of walk alongside that child in that journey and kind of be shown things, I guess, through their play, you know, and them want to communicate that with you. Obviously not being, we're still doing some face-to-face sessions, and obviously but we're also doing some online stuff, and it is different because in terms of doing kind of play therapy online, it doesn't lend itself so much. So I guess what we're doing is kind of talking about things. But the other day I did a session and a boy, he had some puppets and I had some puppets, and we started kind of a bit of a conversation, a bit of an exploration around feelings through the puppets. Another boy wanted to make a den in his house and I made a den in my house, and we just kind of talked a bit about what it was like and explored kind of that whole sense of security, I guess. So we've just really adapted and still tried to bring in as much creativity as we can with the limits of being in different places and the technology that we're having to use at the moment.
Yeah, I'm wondering, what kind of issues are you seeing presented at the moment from families?
So we've definitely seen an increase in terms of parents coming to us where they've got quite violent, aggressive or controlling kind of behaviours from their child, and that's kind of all ages really, and we're really struggling to know how to handle that. And it might be because the child has sort of some additional needs in terms of there might be a level of anxiety, or, you know, obviously lockdown kind of routine is all out and things like that, but just the parents struggling to know how to respond and how to stay safe, I guess, in that. And that's definitely increased since the beginning of kind of lockdown. And then the other side that we're starting to see a little bit more now is with some of the year sixes going back to school, is just that kind of, I think some of it's quite, you know, it's the whole transition, isn't it, of going to a new school, but a totally different transition to how maybe they thought it was going to be. So some anxiety around those changes and around not being with their friends and those kind of things as well.
How does that anxiety like express itself?
I think differently. So sometimes it is that they're acting out because they're anxious, and then sometimes it's because they're withdrawing more and they're kind of not engaging so much with kind of peers or with family members, and kind of taking themselves away more. And I guess again it comes back to the parent knowing the child, isn't it, of knowing what's kind of normal, if you like, for them, and where those differences are, and where they might, maybe that child is, you know, just needs a space. Like again recently a parent referred, that's been a family separation, but the mum was just like, I just recognise that actually we're both here and we can both talk to him, but he just needs somebody else to talk to. And literally his first session he just shared loads because he was just ready for it. He just needed that space to kind of go, this is what's going on for me and this is what I'm kind of challenged with. And a lot of it was around the changes and around the uncertainty around where they were going to live, what was going to happen, and all of these things. So yeah, I think it's just important to kind of pick up on those those changes in behaviours maybe that you notice in your child as well.
And have you got any kind of advice for us, any tips for us, that are those of us, I mean, obviously, if we feel we need to speak to you, we'll talk about it in a moment, how any families listening can access your services. But yeah, like any kind of tips to help manage our families and manage our children's like emotional health in this season.
Yeah. I mean, I think
tricky, hasn't it? Parents are probably struggling as well as children, and it's just everyone's doing what they can to get by. But
definitely, I always think one of my kind of go-to things is just to think about, like, so all emotions are okay. Like, there's no emotion that is not okay. There's obviously the expression of the emotion. So if I was really angry and went around hitting everybody, that's not okay. But actually to feel angry is okay, because it's a normal emotion. So I think one of the big things I always say to people is sometimes it's just about validating that emotion and kind of showing that person that you do understand, that you understand that they're, even if, like, and it's hard, isn't it, because sometimes as a parent you're just like, why do you have to get angry over the same thing all the time? But actually when you bring it back to the emotion of actually it is okay to feel angry, and sometimes just validating that emotion of like, I get it, I understand, I know this is really hard for you, and I'm sorry that we can't change it. I think as a parent there's a real kind of need, and I guess, and it's really normal, isn't it, to kind of want to make things better, to fix it. And I guess when the challenges comes when maybe you can't take that away from your child, you can't, especially during COVID-19, some of these things are, you can't fix it, you can't make school be open again and everything back to normal. And so it's kind of like sitting with the kind of, actually this is not ideal, this is really challenging, but we're in this together and we're here for you and we love you, and all of those kind of messages. So that kind of validation is really important. And then I guess in terms of the relationship between parent and child, I think it's a big challenge is that you cannot change the other person. So if your child is doing something that you really don't like, if they really want to do it, you can't make them not do it, which is really frustrating and really challenging. But what you can do is think about maybe how you're responding, and maybe some things that you might be doing might be escalating that. And sometimes it is, it's the age-old thing of just being silent and just stopping. It's that kind of the ping pong bit, isn't it, where I say something, they say no, I say it again, they continue to say no, and then it kind of blows up a little bit. What's it like just to kind of leave it at that point, not because of the child, not because the child's got away with anything, but for you to be able to actually go, I'm not going to enter into these things, I'm going to kind of find different ways to do it. And it's a challenge, and it's not saying it's the parent's fault, it's just sometimes looking at our own responses empowers us to do something differently, rather than getting into that cycle of why won't you do what I want you to do kind of thing.
Yeah, that's good, and it is so true. I can testify to that. Does really help. Don't always get it right, but
no. And that's the other thing as well, it's that if you can lay your head on the pillow at night and go, did I do a good enough job today? I would say you're doing amazing. So that's the thing to hold on to, isn't it? And and just finding ways to, in the midst of all of this and all the stresses and challenges and different things going on, try and find those moments of joy, even if it is blowing bubbles in the garden, or watching a favourite film together coloured up on, I don't know, just trying to find those, because that will also help repair stuff when it is challenging, and helps you as a parent to bring that joy back into parenting.
Those moments of connection.
Definitely.
I'm interested in as well how you mentioned year sixes. So I've got a year 6, and year 6s, there's like year 11s, year 13s. They're still children, even when they're older, our children. Wondering, there's a grief with this year for those children who have missed out on endings. Even if some of the year 6s, most of the year 6s are maybe back in school now, but it's not the same, is it? There's not the end of year discos and the awards presentations and the signing of the shirts and all that kind of stuff. Everything's going to be very different. How have you got any ideas of how we can manage that grief in that kind of grief process? Because it is a grief, because they've lost out on some stuff, haven't they?
Yeah, definitely. And
actually losing a loved one.
But it's still grief, isn't it? It's like you said, it's all the expectations, and I guess it's voicing it sometimes. I think one of the big things, isn't it, is if you think in grief, it's that one of the hardest things is sometimes finding the space to talk about it, and again, for other people to be able to empathize with it and understand it and not dismiss it of like, well, you know, it's not like you've not lost someone kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? Value that actually this is really important. And for some of those children, you know, particularly I guess thinking like the older years where all their plans, all the things that they thought were going to happen, you know, in terms of, you know, maybe they would think I'll be getting my, you know, my long summer and then I'll be going off to uni, I'll be doing this and all this kind of unknown. I think it is kind of like, helping them to go, you know, it's okay that it's okay that you're feeling this, you know, maybe even thinking about what do they need to do. So sometimes when there's lots of uncertainty, I guess one of the counteracts to help you with uncertainty is thinking, well, what is certain? So, you know, what are we in control of? And so it might be that, you know, you can't do your end of year disco, but you could do a end of year Zoom call with all your mates. I don't know, like it's not the same, and it's not to kind of diminish it to say it's the same, but it's like thinking about, well, what am I in control of, what power do I have over these things? And that sometimes helps people, because I think, you know, you need that to kind of get something back from it and stuff. But I think definitely helping them to talk about it. You know, teenagers are renowned for not being great at talking. Think about when you do it. So going for walks is a great time to talk, because you're not doing eye contact, it's not so intense. And you know, they might chat a little bit more, or going in the car and they're in the back, or they're sat next to you but they're not looking at you, so it's not so intense kind of thing.
That's good.
You know, maybe I think as parents, sharing appropriately, obviously, but sharing some of the loss that you're feeling, because then it makes them know that, well, it's okay. Like, you know, because otherwise I think that's one of the big things, isn't it? When you're in an emotion, is sometimes you think, I'm the only person that's feeling this. It's all me. I'm terrible. I'm rubbish. Da, 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 da. Whereas actually, when you find out that, they feel it too, like, it's not the same as mine, but they do understand what it's like because of this thing, that can really help someone as well.
And I think that word you used earlier, validating things, and I think standing in it with them and saying, this is really sad, this was rubbish this year. Yes, drawing out moments of joy and looking for the good and expressing gratitude for the good, but also you can have good in one hand and the rubbish in the other hand, can't you, at the same time? And just standing in that place with our children and saying, you know, rather than trying to paper over it and say, oh, it's, you know, it's fine, it's, you know, oh, it didn't matter, don't worry, you know, move on to the next thing. I think we need to stand with them and say, this moment wasn't what we wanted.
Definitely. There's something really valuable, isn't there? And I always think about the school gate conversation, you know, when you go up to school gates and you see somebody just as you're like rushing off to go to work or to go and do something else, and you're like, oh, hi, how are you? And basically you don't really want an answer, or they don't really answer. But when you meet up for them for a coffee, or you know, have a phone conversation with them and you're both in that place, that's where you can share, and that's where you can kind of be honest and open. And sometimes it's just somebody just to hear you, you know, to hear how tough this is for you, and not want to make it better, not want to move you through that emotion. Like there's sort of value in actually, I do just feel sad right now, and that's what I need to be. And I think that's definitely some emotions we struggle more with that, don't we? We struggle more with sitting with certain emotions. But
so if anyone's listening to this, Katherine, and thinking actually they're just having a bit of a prompting that they could do with some sessions with you, whether that's the whole family, whether that's the child, whether that's the parent, maybe they've had issues presenting over this last few weeks of lockdown, maybe they were all existing issues that have just been amplified. I know we've got some funding available through Kerith, and you've got different funding streams. How does somebody do that and get in touch with you? And I just want to say to anyone listening, it doesn't have to be really, really bad to do that. We were chatting, Katherine, weren't we? We were saying about if you've got a sore throat, sometimes you need a Strepsil or just a honey and lemon and hot honey, lemon and ginger in an early night. Sometimes you need a course of antibiotics. Sometimes you might even be so severe that people need their tonsils out. There's different levels at different times, and actually if it's just the hot drink in the early night, they could still come to you for that. And so I'd encourage anyone that wants to do that, that's listening, to do that. But how do they do that?
So the easiest way I would say is to go to our website, because it's just been revamped, which is amazing. So everything is on there, and that is just www.kerith.church. And you will find there's a form that you can fill in just to contact us, and then we can give you a call back. There's all our referral forms if you do want to fill that in. There's all the information about all our services. So if you just think, you know, well, play therapy, she described it a bit, but I don't know if that's what we would need. So that's probably the best place to kind of start. And then even if it's literally just send us a message, and we can then talk to you about what's appropriate, because sometimes people are like, I know I need some help, but I don't know, you know, is it me, is it my child, is it, you know, and we will do that kind of conversation. We'll arrange it. We try to be as flexible as we can, because we do appreciate, especially at the moment where you're doing all your homeschooling, you know, if we need to do a conversation in the evening once the children are in bed, we can facilitate that. So don't feel like, oh, I won't be able to do it because my kid will over here, or, you know, but yeah, our website is definitely the best place. So just www.createhope.co.uk.
Brilliant. So that is so helpful, and yeah, I just encourage anyone to go and have a look at what Create Hope are up to, and if you feel that's something for you, then just ask the questions. You're not committing to anything just by pushing the door a little bit. But yeah, it's been great to have you with us, Katherine. I've got one last question for you before you go. Thinking about, so this podcast is called Are We Nearly There Yet? Which, you know, is a common phrase that is said by probably every child to every parent at some point in their life, on a car journey. And thinking about this journey we're on in family life now, for you as journey as kind of, is it CEO of Create Hope? Is that?
Yeah.
You set up this charity, you're doing all this amazing work for your charity. If you were to look back at the Katherine that started up a few years ago on this journey with your charity, what kind of essential items would you take with you on that journey that maybe you didn't realise you needed back then?
I think I've got 5 items. I have thought a little bit about this because I'm not very good on the spot with stuff like this. Faith is the kind of first one that just comes to mind, in that, like, I wouldn't even be on this journey if it wasn't for faith, because it was part of my journey of coming to God that then led me to step out to do the play therapy and the charity and everything. So I think I definitely need some faith in my suitcase. Kind of, I guess alongside that would be courage, because, you know, it's amazing setting up this charity, and it's been such a fantastic journey, but it's also tough as well. I'm not going to lie, there's times when, you know, you do have to step into different things, you do have to kind of keep going, keep persevering. So I think courage in that, and boldness. I would never call myself like a kind of bold person. I'm kind of was always a bit more reserved, but I think because of the heart and the passion behind what we're doing and who we want to help, I think you need that boldness to stand up for those people as well, and to be kind of there for those vulnerable people. Number 4 would be creativity. So obviously we're called Create Hope, we do play therapy, we do all of these things, and I think there's that kind of needing creativity in terms of the work that we do, but also in terms of just us and our approach. You know, during COVID-19 we've had to be very creative, and I'm sure there'll be kind of times in the future where we will still need to be creative to keep going, to kind of reach the people that really need the support. And then the last one, which really isn't the last one, it's probably the most important one really, is, I guess, testimonies and or stories of hope. So that's been like my own journey, so where I've kind of gone through challenges and really felt like God's shown up and God's confirmed that I am where I need to be, but also all the families that we've helped and we've kind of supported, because they're the whole reason that we are here, is because of the families that we support. That's why we're here, that's why we'll continue to be here, and I'd never want to lose sight of that. And I guess having that in the suitcase is that constant reminder, and that constant, you know, when we've worked with a family and things have changed, or we've worked with a child, like that child I talked about with the puppets and stuff, and just the transformation, those are the bits that I definitely kind of don't want to leave behind. So yeah, that would be my suitcase.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing that. You have created hope in so many families' lives, so thank you on behalf of all parents everywhere. I don't think I get to speak on behalf of all parents everywhere. If I did, thank you for the hope you have created in families and brought back into family life through the way that you've got alongside and helped children and parents and whole families. So, and thank you for coming on here today to chat with me.
It's been great. I've loved it. Thank you for having me, and yeah, being able to share a bit of our story, and hopefully, whether just the services we offer, but also just to add, like, if you have a passion or a desire to do something and you are kind of thinking, oh, I could never do that, like, honestly, if I can start a charity, anybody can. Like, so just
Bless
believe
you.
in yourself and, like, take those leaps of faith to do the things that are on your heart and that you really feel God's given you as well, because it's an amazing journey to go on as well. So yeah, I hope that encourages people.
I'm absolutely sure this is going to encourage people. So thank you again. And I can't wait to actually see you in the flesh sometime soon.
I know.
Face, rather than just recording things remotely. So thank you, and I'll see you soon, Katherine.
Bye. See you soon.
Bye. Hey, I wonder if there's any of us who need to take action off the back of what we've heard today. And I wonder if two of those actions may be: one, contacting Create Hope, because you're in a situation at the moment where you need a little bit extra help. Don't be afraid to reach out. Katherine and the team are amazing. You can check out what they do and contact them via their website, kerith.church. The second action might be to step out in boldness, like Katherine was saying. It might not be for you that you're going to step out and start a new charity, but you may have had something placed on your heart, something new to do, something new to create. Well, why don't you jot it down, journal after listening to this, what it is that's on your heart, and why don't you keep yourself accountable by telling somebody that idea this week. We hope that you have a great week. We can't wait for you to join us again next time on Are We Nearly There Yet?